You might recognise this is not my regular kitchen. We're staying in a relative's house up in Norfolk for a week. We're kind of house sitting and looking after parents-in-law. Anyway, I've just been out for a walk today in a local field, and I've picked some lovely, well, these look like sea beet leaves, don't they? They are actually leaves of feral sugar beet, but it's the same plant. Let's go out for a little foraging walk and have a look at where I got them from, and then we'll come back and cook these into a beet leaf and goat cheese tart. So we're visiting relatives near Norwich in Norfolk, miles away from where we live on the south coast of England. And I'm just walking the dog around this field. This is a very similar scenario to the field that's near where I live. This is a farmer's field that's been left fallow. Well, I think we might find it's been left derelict. I'll explain the difference for that in a minute. But I thought it might be interesting to have a wander around here and see if there's anything different from what we've got at home. It might seem like there's not going to be a great deal of difference because Great Britain's not a huge land mass, and it might seem like maybe there's not going to be a great deal of diversity of plant populations. But anyway, let's have a wander around and see what we can find that's the same as what we've got at home, and see if we can find anything that's different. So I think I'm going to cross through, there's a path through here. I'm going to cross through and walk inside the field. Okay, well I've just spotted one thing that is definitely different, and I don't exactly know what it is, which is this plant here. Not sure what that is actually. I have to guess, I'm going to say daisy family, possibly like a cornflower, but it's interesting. It has these kind of weird, I think that's probably a seed structure. It has flowered, it's branched out from below that, and then it's produced more of the same, so it's kind of fractal in nature. If anybody knows what this plant is, do let me know in the comments. I might put it on screen if I've identified it by the time I edit this video. And of course we've got lots of chamomile type things. I don't know exactly what this is. There's about a dozen chamomile like plants that grow in arable soils, that grow in farmland, and they're all kind of difficult to tell apart. We've got a willow herb here. Again, I'll identify that and put it on the screen. But there is something that we don't find down south. I've just spotted it here, which is wild field pansies. And in fact, they seem to be everywhere here. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen those growing wild down where we live. But here, I can see it's everywhere. Actually, now I've spotted it, I can see it's everywhere. More of that willow herb down here with the flowers more slightly open. The sound of bins being emptied off to my right. It's bin day in the locality, so all the wheelie bins are being emptied. And there's a lot of the kind of things that we would expect to find in this kind of a field. So these sort of, again, this is dandelion daisy family stuff here. Various different hawkweeds and thistles. I think this is prickly sow thistle here. Not sure what that one is behind there. But lots and lots of daisy family stuff, Asteraceae, loads of that. In fact, I would say probably dominated by Asteraceae. But yeah, lots and lots of this little field pansy here. Very nice little plant. There's one with a bit more yellow on it. Okay, now this is interesting because this plant here is beet. So this is the same species as sea beet or perpetual spinach or chard or beetroot, or in fact most likely I think sugar beet, because this is Norfolk. They grow sugar beet a lot here, and actually just looking around the field, all of the lighter coloured green tufts you can see here are this beet. So I think I'm going to say that this is probably a field that's been left derelict. So the difference between fallow and derelict: fallow is when you intentionally leave a field empty or without a crop and allow nature to take its course so that the field can recover, so the soil doesn't get exhausted, all sorts of reasons like that. Derelict is when you unintentionally leave a field uncultivated. So for example, I don't know, if the farm was sold, or if the farmer died or something like that, or if the farm closed for any reason and the farm was no longer cultivated, that's what would be called derelict. So and I would say that's what's happened here, because see that stripe of light green down there? That's all of these beet plants. They're everywhere. So that suggests to me that this field was left with an unharvested crop in it, which was probably sugar beet, and it's gone to seed and it's established itself. Oh look, a skylark. Whoa, there it goes. I don't know if you could see that. You most probably could hear it. Let's see if you can hear it over the top of me wittering. Okay, what else we got here? This is a species of mallow. Probably common mallow. So anyway, yes, as far as I can tell here, there's so much of this beet plant around that I'm going to say it seems likely that this field was left with an unharvested crop in it. Here's something we don't see an awful lot of. So this is wild lettuce. And it's a prickly plant, and you wouldn't think that that's lettuce, would you? But it is. Again, a plant in the Asteraceae. It's a daisy family plant, lettuce. There's another one there. And that's not gone wild from a cultivated lettuce, that's just a wild plant. That's the wild version of lettuce. Eva, come on. Ah, corn poppies. This is another wildflower, quite common in cultivated fields. So that's a corn poppy. Very pretty. And in some places you'll find fields that are completely red with corn poppies, where the seeds lay dormant in the soil for decades. And when the soil is ploughed, the seeds come to the surface and germinate. And you end up with a kind of stock of poppy seeds lying dormant in the soil, and every time it's ploughed, fresh seeds come up, new plants grow. Here's another one of those kind of chamomile type daisy family plants. I think this might be called pineapple weed. I have trouble telling these similar but related plants apart from each other. This is creeping thistle. This is one I am familiar with. So this is creeping thistle. We get this in the field near my house. And it tends to grow in clumps like this. So creeping because it's growing underground. It's got roots that will grow underground and new plants crop up. That's why very often found in kind of clusters like this plant. That's one I'm familiar with. Another one here, this is goosefoot. This is an edible plant. Quite often pick this one and eat it. Difficult to tell the exact species of goosefoot because there's lots of them and they're all quite similar, but it's a kind of unmistakable family. The underside of the leaves has got these kind of little grains of stuff on them, little whitish crystalline grains. But that's a plant I've eaten quite a few times. More corn poppies down there. Okay, let's head down the side here. So another chamomile type plant here, but again I'm going to have trouble identifying exactly which one we're looking at here, and there's more of it right there. So there's something interesting about this plant here, which I'll leave you to spot. Can you spot the interesting thing about this plant? I'll walk round. Can you see it yet? Okay, what it is this. And this is an example of fasciation or fasciation, depending on how you want to pronounce it. This is where something's damaged the plant, possibly one of those little black beetles earlier in its development, and it's caused the plant to develop in an unusual shape. And so what we've got is, instead of a slender rounded stem, we've got a flattened stem. So whatever it was that happened probably happened way down here in this bud before all of these plant stems grew here. And it causes the plant to develop in a flattened, strange and distorted fashion. Quite common in the daisy family. I got a video about it where I observed this in a lot of thistles in a field near where I live. This is the only example I can find in this field. I've looked at quite a lot of other plants in this field. This is the only one I can find. It can be caused by disease, insect damage, physical damage by rabbits or something like that. All kinds of factors can cause the plant to do this. In this case, since this is the only example on this plant, and indeed I couldn't find any others like it in the field despite looking around, I'm going to say this is probably physical damage, probably from an insect when the plant was growing down at that point down there. Because if we trace it down, oh, it's all the way down actually, it's all the way down this stem. It's flattened, so perhaps it was damaged, perhaps it was physically damaged when it was just sprouting. It's interesting that it's only actually affected the terminal bud, but I guess that's the way things go. And this is one we do get back down home. This is a convolvulus, so this is a kind of bindweed. This looks different to the ones we have back down on the south coast. The ones we have are typically whiter than this, with little pink stripes on the flowers. This one's almost entirely pink, and that's just going to be a local variation, subspecies type of thing. Now here's a plant I don't recognise. So I can tell it's a member of the Apiaceae because it has these umbels. It looks like cow parsley, except the stems are smooth and they've got this kind of powdery coating on them. The leaves are finely cut. I have no idea what this is. There are other species of umbellifer that live in different parts of the country. Obviously this is one of these things where we don't eat this because we don't know what that is. This is somewhere where we could make a fatal mistake by assuming that was cow parsley and eating it. I don't even know what it is. It could be rough chervil, I'm not sure. But there's more of it there. Slightly reddish stems. It doesn't look like well, in some ways it looks like hemlock, but I don't think it is. I think this is a species I haven't identified on camera before. And it's important to realise all those little insects, in this context of a field that's been allowed to go a little bit wild, they're not pests. They're part of the whole ecosystem here, so they're going to be pollinating those flowers. They're also going to be providing food for birds, for other invertebrates, small lizards perhaps, other things like that. So this is a derelict farmed field on its way to returning to something like nature, but actually providing an enormous resource for wild birds, pollinating insects, and wildlife in general. And I kind of like it when I see this sort of thing happening. Not because I hate farming, I don't hate farming, it's where my food comes from, but because it's a testament to nature's resilience. Small tortoiseshell butterfly there, let's see if we can get a bit closer. No, it's gone. So I think that's more or less the end of my little ramble around this field. It's been a very enjoyable walk to go around here and look at the wildflowers that are familiar to me and some things that aren't as well. Really interesting just to get down and have a close look at flowering plants, just observe nature doing its thing. I will come back and pick some of those beet leaves, and I think I will make a spinach tart or something like that. Anyway, I fancy a cup of coffee now, so I'm going to head for home. Some of the plants are showing red streaking, which is the red colour that you get in beetroot, because this is the same species as beetroot. Anyway, I'm going to fill up my bag with beet leaves, and then we're going to go home and make a kind of tart. Okay, so I've got quite a decent amount of beet leaves in there. I'm going to have to pick those over, give them a good wash, and maybe pick off any tough bits. I did pick them from quite high up on the plant, so they hopefully shouldn't be too dirty, but there could still be soil on them. It's rained overnight, but before this rain, that field's been quite dusty and dry, so some sand and dust might have blown up onto the leaves. I've always found the best way to wash leafy wild vegetables like these is to plunge them in water. Rather than try and rinse them under running water, I'm going to give them a good plunge. And that gives us a chance for anything that's stuck on there to really get loosened up and come away. And doing it this way gives me a chance to really see how effective this cleaning is being, because what we'll do is, if I just lift all of that up, yeah, we can see there's a few little specks of dirt still in the water. So if you've ever grown perpetual spinach, you will instantly recognise these leaves. It is the same plant botanically. So beetroot, perpetual spinach, Swiss chard, sugar beet and sea beet, all exactly the same species of plant, just been developed into different things for human consumption or otherwise. Let's have a look at that now. Again, still some little bits coming off. I think they're mostly seeds now, actually. So let's see what's coming off of there now. It's mostly just little bits of seed. So this will probably be the last rinse now. So it's taken 4 rinses to get that as clean as I want it to be. Because this is not my normal kitchen, and I've got some kind of limitations on ingredients and facilities, mainly just familiarity problems. I'm going to be using a hack or two today. So whereas normally I might make short crust pastry myself, I went out and bought a pack of ready rolled short crust pastry, which is going to be not quite the right shape for my dish. So I've just buttered the dish, and then I'm just going to let that relax down into it. Yeah, a little bit short on the sides here, so I'm going to have to do a bit of a hack job with this pastry, but not to worry, I'm sure it'll be fine. Hack time for the pastry. I'm just going to leave a little margin on there like that, because that will help the pastry not to flip back over that side. And then I'm going to cut a piece of pastry just to kind of backfill that space. So we'll go for something like that. Lift that up and patch it in Good, we'll just have a bit of extra thick crust there, won't be a problem. And then a similar sort of thing over this side as well. Okay. Spare pastry I could make into jam tarts or something, but I don't know whether we'll have time to do that. And we'll give that a little prick all over just to allow any steam to escape while it's baking. And then one thing I did find is they've got some baking beans here. I don't normally use these, but I will today since they're available. And we might as well use this paper while we're at it. And those are just ceramic beads that will help that pastry to stay flat and keep it in the shape of the pie while it bakes. So I'm going to blind bake that in the oven for probably 20 minutes or so, just to firm up this pastry before we make the filling. In fact, we can make the filling at the same time. Oh boy, their oven seems to run a bit hotter than mine. Just get those beans out of there and let them cool down separately. Pastry is cooked, nicely set, but still quite soft on the bottom, and that's just fine. While the crust is cooling down, we're just going to make the filling now. So I've got a bit of butter in a pan here. First time using an induction hob, how about that? Wish me luck. So that butter's sizzling away now, and before that burns, I'm just going to go straight in with the spinach. I'm calling it spinach, the beet leaves. And they're just going to kind of steam in the residual water that's left on them from washing. It smells really good. It's got a really sweet kind of spinach smell to it. Really sweet, leafy greens smell to it. So it probably doesn't need much more cooking than that. We just need to cook it sufficiently that I can squeeze some moisture out of it. Okay, that's going off the heat now. But I will, while that's just sitting, just season that with a bit of black pepper, a little bit of salt, and I have some other flavourings that I'm going to put in, but I don't want to put them in here because I'm squeezing the moisture off of this. So any seasoning I had really here, I could lose as I squeeze out that moisture. I'm just now going to take these leaves, which are cooled down sufficiently that I can handle them, and I'm going to squeeze as much juice as I can out of them, because that will just make the pie go soggy if we leave it in there. Now obviously I am squeezing out some of that butter and of course some of the seasoning, so we're going to adjust that afterwards. I tell you what, I'm just going to taste a little bit of that now. It's good. I would say the texture is a little bit tougher than regular spinach, certainly tougher than regular spinach, probably about the same as sea beet, but that's not going to matter because I'm going to chop this up really finely. And so having squeezed the moisture out of that, I'm just running the knife through it now in kind of opposing directions. I want it chopped really nice and fine because for one thing that will mitigate any stringiness or toughness that we might have found in some of the older leaves I picked. But also, it means the flavour will come out. It's pie assembly time. And I've got some goat cheese here. I wasn't sure how much it would need to fill this up, so I got 2 of them. I happen to think that goat cheese and spinach is a really, really good combination. But also, there's a couple of other things we can add to really elevate it just a little bit further. Now what I'm going to do with the cheese here is cut it so that it's kind of the depth of the pie. So I'm going to cut nice generous slices. That's like maybe Eva. That's like maybe 1.5 centimeters. And then I'm going to cut each one of those in half, just so we haven't got huge chunks of cheese in the tart. And I'll see how this goes because I've got the other cheese as well that I can use. So just going to arrange those into the tart fairly evenly. I think actually this might be enough. Okay, I think I will probably put a couple more slices in there. I'm just going to try a bit of this. And we want a generous amount of that in this pie. I keep calling that pie. It's a tart, also known as a flan, even though flan means something very specific and different in some parts of the world. Terminology is a funny thing. Right, we're done with the cheese, and that's nicely arranged in there. And cheese and onion and spinach would be really nice, and I didn't have the time to go and get some onions and cook them down and sweeten them and caramelise them. So I'm going to cheat. I'm using caramelised red onion chutney. And all I'm going to do with this is just drop a few little bits in between the chunks of cheese. Right, I think that's probably about right. A little bit more in there. There we go. And that might seem like a lot of chutney, but this is a really sweet chutney. Nextly, this spinach is just going to get kind of pushed into all of those little gaps. That's quite good actually, there's quite a decent amount there. Often this stuff cooks down to the point that there's almost nothing left by the time you've steamed it to wilt it. But this seems to be doing okay. Okay, got some local eggs. Lovely golden yolks. And I think, I don't know, I was going to say 3, I think maybe 4 for this big flan. I've got 6, so if I need to add a couple more, I can. And this is where we can add seasoning that isn't going to go away. So, a little bit of salt. And then the magic ingredient, which is going to be ground mace. Now, if you know what nutmeg is, mace is like the bit from the outside of nutmeg. A nutmeg, when it grows on the tree, is like a peach. And there's an outer fleshy layer, and inside there's a stone, which is the nutmeg. But wrapping that stone, there's like a stringy substance that is mace. And it's a spice that's similar to nutmeg. It's got a slightly sharper, more resinous and aromatic flavour. So probably about 1/4 teaspoonful of that. Can have a little splash of milk in there just to loosen that a bit, because those eggs are really tight where they're so fresh. Do you know what? I'm going to have a tiny bit more mace in there because I really want to taste it. The oven's up to temperature now, and I'm just going to pour this egg mixture over the top here. We'll see how far it goes. Yeah, I don't think I need any more, because it will souffle up a little bit when it bakes, and I want the cheese to be exposed so that crisps and browns a little bit as well. So that's going to go into the oven now for probably 25 minutes. It will bake from the outside in, so I better just look through the door, and once I've seen it puff up in the middle, it means it's done. Okay, and there it is. Considering I had to cook this in somebody else's kitchen with an unfamiliar oven and hob, I think it's come out okay actually. So it's cooked all the way through. I can feel it's firm in the middle there. Just got to now let that cool for probably at least 20 minutes before I even attempt to take it out and cut it. Right, this is cooled down now. Hopefully enough to be cut. Getting the first slice out is always a little bit iffy. Seemed to have gone okay though. Right, well there it is. Let's get that to the table, give it a taste. Right then. So, the filling's all nicely cooked together. Oh, it's really good. It's really, really good. There is something about the combination of tangy goat cheese, spinach and nutmeg, or in this case mace, that I think is just a fantastic marriage. And with that little bit of red onion chutney that is in there as well, it's really good. Super happy with that. And this leaf beet is not just more tasty than spinach, it's got a kind of succulence to it as well. Of course, normally I would serve this with some potatoes and maybe some other vegetables, or maybe a salad or something like that. I'll probably do that later with some of the other pieces, but I thought I might just taste this now. Considering I'm kind of completely out of my element here, both geographically and in someone else's kitchen, I'm actually really pleased with how that came out. So there we go, a bit of a weird mix of content today, but then that's kind of what this channel is about. So I hope that was interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.